There are enormous challenges, and that's inbuilt in a question that I would like to ask Michael directly about the New Development Bank, the NDB. I think Michael can explain to all of us the problems that the NDB faces. I had the first reaction already from Sergei Glaziev, the Ministry of Macroeconomics for the Eurasian Economic Union, which is subordinated to the Eurasia Economic Commission, subordinated to Eurasia Economic Union. And Glaziev said something extremely important. Why the NDB is more or less paralyzed and is not very adventurous in terms of giving loans in bypassing the US dollar, because the statutes of the bank were written totally dependent to the US dollar. Glaziev said, look, at the time I warned the Russian authorities and the other nations, the BRICS 5 at the time, look, you cannot do this. This statute, everything has to be organized in terms of our national currencies. They didn't listen, and now they are in a jam because they are absolutely afraid of handing out loans and then be hit by American sanctions, and the receivers of these loans being hit by American secondary sanctions. So Michael can really explain to all of us, of course, this is true, but what could they do to get out of this jam? And that explains another thing, why they didn't get into detail about more loans, payment systems, apart from the platitudes that we already know. Of course, they're going to increase trade settlements in their own national currencies. We already know that. So they're going to try to increase. But in terms of receiving loans that they really need, and some of these nations would really need help from the NDB. I'm thinking about Argentina, especially. How could that work considering the current statutory situation of the bank right now? So over to you, Michael, please.
Well, I think you've put your finger on what the real nightmare of the West is, and that is that ultimately, of course, the BRICS 11 are going to merge with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization simply because they're under threat from the United States. You didn't mention three members of three people who were not at the BRICS meeting, who were the strongest backers of this merger, and that's President Biden and Blinken and Nuland. They are driving these countries together to sort of help catalyze their coming together in this natural union, because it's either we hang together or we hang separately, as the Americans like to say. You also pointed out quite correctly that the key to all of this is indeed oil and energy. That's what the Western press cannot discuss, because the center point of all U.S. foreign policy since 1945 has been the international oil industry. The Americans say have done already in the 1930s. The Americans were doing charts to show that the increase in GDP of every country is coordinated with energy use per worker in productivity. The way to increase productivity is by oil, gas, coal, and energy. And if you can control energy by the Seven Sisters, the big oil companies of Standard Oil, Shell Oil, and the others, then you can simply turn off the lights and turn off the transportation of other countries. And if you can control oil and the food trade by not having other countries produce their own grains, but only making export food crops, and if you can oppose land reform by force and revolution and client oligarchies to prevent basically family-based farming producing their own food, then you have the ability to impose sanctions on other countries, and that's really the only way that the West can try to resist the BRICS 11. They have nothing to offer at this point except refraining from fighting these countries and going to war with them. So the SCO is what is going to be protecting these countries from the retaliation. And if they can become self-sufficient in energy and food, then you've taken away essentially America's ability to impose sanctions on other countries to say, we're going to starve you out and stop your economy if you don't do what we want. And in fact, it's the BRICS 11, especially Russia and China, that have the ability to say, well, we can put sanctions on you. We can just stop contact. You want to separate from us? You don't like what we're doing? We can just stop contact with you. You don't have to buy our rare earths or our gallium or our all of our nickel. We can. You go your way. We'll go ours. Now, the problem is, as you pointed out, your very first point was Argentina. And I think that is a problem. And on the one hand, of course, Lula wanted Argentina to come in, but Argentina and Brazil have the same problem. Their dollar debt is not like the dollar debt of African countries or Asian countries. Their dollar debt is owed to, as you put it, the 50 families that control Argentina. The dollar debt's owed to their own oligarchy. So the question is, when you talk about what's Argentina's interest, the answer is, well, what Argentina are you talking about? Are you talking about the Argentine 0.01% that has controlled Argentine policy? Or are you talking about the whole economy as a whole? Well, I hope that one effect of these BRICS meetings will be that the political elections that are upcoming very soon in the runoff elections in Argentina will really be for the people. Do you want to join the BRICS, or do you really want to dollarize the economy, which means do you want to shift all central planning away from the government, away from what you elect, to the 50 families? Well, Lula has a problem very much like this because when in 1990, when Brazil, like Argentina, was paying 45% interest on its foreign debt, the only people who were buying this foreign debt were Brazil's leading families. Yeah. And these are the families that removed Lula from power and put in the corrupt U.S. neoliberal president. And Lula has to deal with this reality that Brazil has a similar dominance by the leading banking families. How are the BRICS going to deal with these internal strains? Does it really require a revolution or not? That's the question. And it's the United States is going to do everything it can to try to produce it, to interfere with the elections, as it interfered with Bolsonaro in Brazil, as it interfered with the Argentinian elections after the Pinochet era. That's really what's going to be the whole thing about it. You mentioned the BRICS currency, and I think it's important to point out that it would be way premature to even think about an actual currency in the sense that what people use to buy and sell goods. President Putin was very clear in his speech. He talked about a single settlement currency. What he said was, I better quote it because this is very important for our discussion. Mm-hmm. I believe that a single settlement currency definitely deserves our attention. It's a complex issue, but we have to resolve it in one way or another. And the second issue deals with carrying out economic transitions between our countries. This is not a currency for spending. This means that there are going to be surpluses and deficits among the BRICS countries. How are they going to deal with the fact that the major surplus country, the major countries providing infrastructure, port development, oil and energy and food are going to be China and Russia? There has to be something more than just plain currency swaps, which are sort of a marginal issue. There has to be something, and we've discussed this before, like what the IMF called paper gold with SDRs, which simply meant foreign countries financing American military spending abroad, but more like what Keynes described in 1944, a BRICS bank that will issue its own kind of paper gold that will only be used among countries themselves for settling their own imbalances, so that, yes, for the time being, China and Russia will help them develop. But the difference between what they're doing and what the IMF and the US NATO nations are doing is that their investment is actually going to help countries grow and be independent instead of being dependent. The whole objective of international finance for the BRICS is the diametric opposite of the dependency that's the objective of international finance, US style and neoliberal style. So at some point, assuming that the Chinese, Russian, Algerian, and all the other countries that are helping provide resources to the BRICS member countries, these countries will be able to develop enough of their own production that you can develop a mutual aid group among these countries. And I think that specifically President Putin mentioned coffee. He was talking about African coffee largely, but also Brazilian coffee, that the coffee exporters get only a portion of the final price of what the coffee is sold for, because they don't do the refining, they don't do the marketing. The intention of the plan of the BRICS will be to actually have vertical integration. The countries that are dismissed as raw materials producers and played against each other to have low value added raw materials production, meaning low rent added, means leaving all of the economic rent, all of the monopoly rent to the United States, Holland, England, the countries that do the refining and the actual marketing. This is going to be the aim of the BRICS countries, and to the extent that the countries that formerly were selling raw materials only at the cost of production, they can now say, well, there's been a huge economic rent for the oil companies. The oil companies can spend 20 cents to produce a barrel of oil, and they can sell it for $20 or $80. Well, we're going to now get that, and that's how we're going to finance our own development. Terribly sorry, we cannot afford to finance your development anymore because you have not been friendly to us. We're using our development to finance our own economic independence with a different economic system. The economic system you'd promised would be just like yours, developing our economies. That's the system you've tried to block us from doing. Military, and we're going to need the Shanghai Cooperation Organization just to protect ourselves, and we're going to need the trade and energy and food just to make sure that you cannot turn off our lights. You cannot starve us. There's nothing you can do to us. And you'd better be nice to us, because there is something we can do to you.
Michael, before, sorry. Well, definitely to your point, Pepe, keep your thought. But I also wanted to kick it to you and ask, because I think Michael just gave a huge rundown of the economic significance of this BRICS expansion and what it all means for these alliances. Now, if you could, after you give your thought, could you talk about why these 6? And given that the 16th summit is going to be held in Russia, and there are reports that 10 more will join, it's almost like a Sweet 16 is already being predicted to join. Right. So why these 6 countries though now? Because for me, when I looked at them, I said, wow, that's kind of like a huge blow to the gut to U.S. hegemony and the neocons and the unipolarists when I looked at the list. But
yes, absolutely. I think I already touched on the energy angle, which is absolutely essential. So China and Russia, from the beginning, they knew that these 3, Persian Gulf, let's put it, and in case of Iran, Persian Gulf, Caspian, will have to be there. Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Emirates, because this will turn the energy market worldwide upside down. Before I continue, I still keep it for you, Michael. Please explain how the NDB, what can they do to get out of this jam, because they are still linked to the Western financial system. Okay, so now I will continue before Michael organizes his kick-ass answer. Well, geographically, they had to have some sort of balance. From the beginning, the BRICS always thought in geographical terms that we are a global organization. So obviously they had to increase representation in Latin America. The obvious candidate was Argentina. In Africa, the obvious candidate was Egypt. Another obvious, which will come next year, certainly Algeria. And the non-obvious, which was a masterstroke at the last minute, Ethiopia. And of course, the Arab world. So 3 representing the Arab world and West Asia. So they represent, 2 represent the Arab world and 3 represent West Asia. So now what's missing, in fact, is Central Asia. This is extremely important because Central Asia, I just came back from Central Asia. Last week, I was in the heart of the heartland. I was crossing Uzbekistan again, just like I did last summer. Now I'm going to Central Asia again every year to keep the pulse of what's going on. And what I saw was absolutely extraordinary. I saw competition, direct competition on the spot between the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians. And obviously, in Uzbekistan, which is a very peculiar case because the Americans have been, since the country started to liberalize only 5 years ago, the Americans went in full force. So you see Coke and Pepsi everywhere. You see an enormous American business center in Tashkent. But the Chinese are making inroads. Don't forget that that famous pipeline that the Chinese financed and built in Turkmenistan all the way to Xinjiang crosses Uzbekistan. So this is an example, a fascinating example of the new Silk Roads in practice. You're driving your Chevrolet in a road from Samarkand to Tashkent, for instance, just like I did with my driver. And you stop to refill. And you refill with liquefied natural gas from Turkmenistan. How cool is that? Because Uzbekistan, they have the transit rights as well. So everybody who has a Chevrolet in Uzbekistan, if they didn't have it from the beginning, they did the retooling to be moved by natural gas. And you know how much is a full tank of LNG for a Chevy? The equivalent of $2. $2. So that's it. This is the new Silk Roads in action. This is Pipeline-Istan in action. This is Eurasia integration in action. And this is a lambda consumer from a Central Asian nation profited from all of it because they can. No wonder everybody has a car in Uzbekistan because they are running on gas. So this is a key example. So we need Central Asian nations inside BRICS as well. And the number one candidate, of course, for the moment at least, is Kazakhstan, once again because of the oil gas angle. And Kazakhstan is a very, very complicated case because with Tokayev, they are still hedging their bets between the collective West and Eurasia integration. The problem is they are a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They are a member of the Eurasia Economic Union, led by Russia. They are a member of the Belt and Road Initiative, the New Silk Roads, the Chinese New Silk Roads. So you cannot hedge your bets with the collective West when you are a member of these 3 organizations. So what's the missing piece? Okay, let's bring Kazakhstan to BRICS 15 or BRICS 20, and then that's it. No more hedging. You are with us. You're part of our organization. You are invested into Eurasia integration and Global South integration. Because you know that if you don't do that, or if you're not protected enough, there's going to be a repeat of the color revolution beginning of last year when Tokayev was literally saved by Vladimir Putin and the CSTO. And this is something that the Kazakhs cannot, they are not allowed to forget something like this. But still Tokayev, because he's under extreme pressure. And of course, Kazakh elites that profit from Western investments in the oil industry, especially. When you go, for instance, to one of those five-star hotels in Astana or in Nakhtal by the Caspian, and you see these Kazakh oligarchs, parading their new Pradas and all that, and making money out of European investments in the Kazakh oil industry. Once again, it's fifth columnists inside a key energy-producing country. So I'm sure that the Russians and the Chinese know this upside down. So obviously, Kazakhstan will have to be in the next batch. So Central Asia needs representation inside BRICS. For the moment, they don't have it. It is a battleground. I wrote a column about that, trying to explain in broad strokes that it is one, if not the prime battleground of Eurasia integration, because everybody is, the Japanese are also there, the Turks are there. For the moment, not, you see billboards of Turkish products here and there, but for the moment it's incipient. You see some Turkish companies landing some real estate deals, etc. But compared to Russia, Chinese, and American influence is still negligible. But they need a representation inside BRICS. So this is the next step. So answer your questions. BRICS thinks in geographical terms in a balance around the world. For instance, there's no representation for Oceania for obvious reasons. They're all American colonies. So you cannot have Oceania on BRICS, or the Pacific Islands for that matter. But major continents, America, Africa, not Europe for obvious reasons, but they could have, for instance, in the future, why not? Serbia. Of course, if they get Serbia into BRICS 15, there's going to be a NATO bombardment of Serbia the next day. Okay, but anyway, this is something that should not be discounted, especially because in terms of not only BRICS, but in terms of Russian thinking of greater Eurasia partnership, this does not apply only to Eurasia. It applies to the Euro side of Eurasia as well. So it's open to European participation. Could be Serbia, could be Greece, for instance. If there is a change of government in Italy in the near future, could be Italy as well, which for the moment is a partner of the Belt and Road. And under Meloni, they are discussing or maybe pull out, which would be once again a case of Italy shooting themselves in the back. But it could happen, considering that Meloni is under tremendous pressure by the Americans. And the people who advise Meloni are all Atlanticists. Very complicated. But the overall geographic representation of BRICS is going to improve over and over again. We're going to have more from Latin. There's a long list of South Americans that want to be part of BRICS, including Bolivia. Bolivia is dying to get into the next round. Africans, you name it, right? And Southeast Asians, very, very interesting. Maybe in the next batch, we're going to have at least one, if not two, from ASEAN, the ASEAN 10. Thailand already said we want in. Indonesia, they already said we want in. So maybe we're going to have Indonesia and Thailand, two ASEAN members in the next batch next year. So, it's in terms of expanding their geographical reach, they are covering all bases.
Before Pepe has to go, I know because Pepe, you have time constraints.
I'm sorry, guys, but
no. But I want Michael to answer your question about the new development take before you leave. Yes. So, Mike, I don't know if you want to comment on that and anything else that you want to follow up.
I think Pepe is quite right to focus on Kazakhstan. Now, there's very little discussion of Central Asia here, but the oil companies have been really brutal towards Kazakhstan. They violated almost all their agreements. There have been huge oil spills. They polluted the country, and the oil companies have very smartly created a client oligarchy representing their interests against the Kazakh people. But one strong point that may be a counter reaction is the Kazakh women. The IMF has created a disaster for most women in Kazakhstan by microcredit. In other words, that's imagine your credit card has 30% interest rates compounded annually. The women who are do the shopping in Kazakhstan have basically the families have been all driven into debt by microcredit, which is one of the most predatory, vicious kinds of credit, despite the fact that it's idealized in the West, little loans to help people develop. These are emergency loans to help them avoid starvation. And what's idealized in the West is the starvation and the bankruptcy of local families throughout Central Asia. So there is a lot of help for reform in Kazakhstan. And certainly what Russia and China can do is saying, look, you have not got what the Western economies oil companies have promised. You can say you've been guilty of violating the laws. We are nullifying your contract because of your bad behavior. And there have been a number of books. You can go on my website, and I've talked about their bad behavior. Simply asking for that. There's another thing that the global South countries can do, and that is that while the United States can say, well, you have to pay reparations if you take the oil, and if you, under the international laws, if you pass a law that costs money for a corporation, the government can be sued and give all the money back to the corporation. So you have to pay all of the cleanup costs because you were dumb enough to sign the contract, just because we said we'll shoot you if you don't sign the contract. All of this can just be simply repudiated. And I think that was the question that Pepe wanted me to talk about before. What really can the BRICS countries do playing hardball? Well, one thing they can do, the press has talked about, how much wealth and reserves do the BRICS countries have? Well, naturally, you count their gold as a large part of their reserves. But where is this gold? Much of their gold is not in their own countries. It's in the New York Federal Reserve Bank in the basement. It's in the Bank of England. And for African countries, it's in the Bank of France. They can ask for their gold back. Right now, this gold is being held hostage from them. If they just ask for the gold back, send the airplanes, give it back. Germany tried to do that a few years ago. I said, well, can't you begin to give us the gold that we moved there after, when the world was more dangerous? And the U.S. said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't. We've already, we've done something with the gold. There's a legal problem in our giving it to you. And they haven't even given Germany the gold. So let's say the BRICS country number one ask for their gold, and if the United States and England and France do not return their gold, then they can take compensation, including all of the foreign investments in their countries. They can do another thing, especially the African countries. They can say, when we BRICS countries are speaking for Africa, we have the majority. You've stolen our gold. Our gold was what Libya's President Gaddafi had. You took all the $8 billion, however much, the billions of dollars of gold they took, just like they took the $8 billion of Afghanistan's gold. Say, give us back the gold that you've taken. You cannot expect us to pay our foreign dollar debts if you have come and seized our gold and will not even give us our gold back. That would be the most, it does not take a revolution. It doesn't take a change in law. They can do that within the existing system. It's our gold. We're a sovereign country. We want it in our country. And by the way, we're going to have to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So when you give us the gold, you can't send your troops in and do what you did in Latvia, in Libya, and simply grab it all back for yourself and say, finders keepers. I think this is an element of the financial future that nobody has talked about. And the same thing with the military bases. They say we can't have two countries with a military base fighting each other with military bases in our country, because then you'll fight each other in our country and we'll end up looking like Ukraine. So I'm afraid you'll have to go. these are the things that are on the horizon that, needless to say, you can't have a more direct discussion than you did have, but it's pretty obvious that this is the direction in which the BRICS meetings were going. And you can just imagine, sitting down, well, let's treat finance as a war, which is the way the US and NATO countries treat finance. If it's a war, there's a way to fight it, and there's a strategy, and there's a defense, and we're not going to just pretend there isn't a war on.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.